We're joined by somebody who is from an organization or a group or a campaign. She'll tell us what this is. KE Budget Talk. Eve Mathai is a co-founder. Good morning, Eve.
Good morning.
Good to have you in the Situation Room.
Thanks for having me.
That's the hot seat. But because you're Mwananchi and today we are all Mwananchi, let's just call that the black seat today with a tinge of red. So tell us about KE Budget Talk. What's that?
All right. My name is Eve Mathai, and I work for a community-based organization known as Slums Information Development and Resource Centers. And under that organization, I'm leading two governance initiatives, that is Follow the Money Kenya and KE Budget Talk. So KE Budget Talk is an online advocacy platform and also a budget literacy and advocacy platform whereby we interact with the general public to break down the budget making process and to encourage them and mobilize them to take part in public participation processes and to do it in a meaningful manner, because the idea behind it is I attended one of these public participation forums within Embakasi sub-county, and I realized that nobody had actually seen the document. So what were they coming to discuss? And it was the annual development plan. So the whole idea is to give recommendations on the draft document so that the input can be taken and it ends up in the final document. So I felt like it was not being done in a meaningful way. So the best way to do it is to mobilize communities, especially grassroots communities who are the biggest beneficiaries of public services. Mobilize them like a week in advance. We go through the document, come up with a memo, and then go to the public participation forum with the memo. So we are just handing it to them, and then it's easy to track the level of uptake of the input in the final documents. So basically, that's what we do.
Well done. So when you say you mobilize, how do you mobilize? Because KE Budget Talk, you said, is a digital one, it's an online platform. So do you do physical meetings or do you do online conversations?
Yes, we do both physical meetings, and we also work with a community of media journalists. So these are journalists who are mostly reachable in informal settlements of Nairobi. So we've been mentoring them for the past year for them to understand the budget process and to communicate budget happenings in a timely manner to the community. So we do it through community radio and through town hall forums.
Why are you interested? Why would an organization be interested in what many would say this amorphous thing of the budget and the process? And then why interested, even more than that, interested in taking it and what it means to the community? Why?
Okay, for a very long time, we all know that non-governmental organizations depend heavily on support from international partners. So there are times that our organization, for instance, would go for long periods of time without funding. So what happens to the interventions that we've initiated in the community? What happens to them? Because members of the community keep on coming to our center and asking us, what happened to that initiative on the right to food? What happened to the initiative on health advocacy? So we decided to look a bit further in what the government is doing, because they have an obligation to actually provide these public services to the public. So that's how we got into having a governance department in our organization.
Right. And it sounds great. Two questions.
Yes.
Are you monitoring only county, or are you also doing the national government? And then what has the reception of the community been? Because there's this widespread perception that Kenyans are apathetic. Is this what you find?
All right. So within our organization, we're doing it on a county level, but in collaboration with other budget facilitators around the country, which have been convened by the International Budget Partnership and Uraia. They've taken us through very rigorous training on the budget making process, and they do it in a consistent manner. So in collaboration with other facilitators in the country, we've been doing advocacy, budget advocacy, periodically as the budget process moves forward. So on a national level, we collaborate with other budget facilitators. On a county level, we do it within our project. Then the reception from the community has been very good. In the beginning, it was a bit difficult because there's limited capacity on reading and understanding budget documents from the community. But with time, as we've taken them step by step, they are more, they can make relation towards them paying taxes and how it translates to public service delivery. And there was one particular instance that happened when I was taking part in a certain rally in town. I stopped to buy some airtime. So the lady in town asked me, why are you demonstrating? So I told her, because public resources are being stolen. Then she said, but I've checked my bank account and
My
money is still intact. So you see, that's most Kenyans think like that. They can't make the relation between paying taxes and service delivery. So there's need for CSOs, for the government as well, to build the capacity for Kenyans on the budget making process.
What has the response of the government been? The county government?
I'm also a coordinator for Nairobi Central and Eastern Regional Budget Hub, and I've been working very closely with the County of Nairobi. And so far, I have seen a lot of response. It took some time because I needed to know the right people to address. That's always the bone of contention. Who is the person who is handling the ADP? Which department is handling the CIDP? Once we got to know those people, we started working closely with them, and they've been very receptive. So every time they have these forums, they actually invite us, and if there are opportunities to also build the capacity of citizens, they're also very progressive on it.
What has the uptake been?
The uptake of
the issues that are generated?
I can talk about the previous ADP, which I was heavily involved in, specifically for Embakasi South, because
ADP?
Annual Development Plan. I'm heavily involved in Embakasi South constituency. So I took it upon myself to draft the memo and send it to the Director of Planning and Nairobi County. And what actually happened is he actually copy-pasted exactly what was written in the recommendation into the final document. So if that can happen in one constituency, imagine if there are proactive people in all the other 16 constituencies. We begin to see community priorities being taken up in these final documents. So there still needs to, we still need to mobilize more budget champions across the county and also across the country to take up this advocacy.
You know, whenever we talk about budget, and like you've said, we talk about budget and we see, so money has been allocated, money is going to be spent, no connection between that and what I should expect to see on the ground. And also, no connection between that and whether there's a policy or a plan that is guiding this particular budget. Now, and this is where you come in with your community engagement and grassroots mobilization of people. Starting with the drafting and development of the county integrated development plans, and then the annual development plans, like you've said, and then the budgeting process. Is that too much to ask people to do?
It is a very complex process. And for instance, being an election year, the budget making process has actually been rushed. Things that are supposed to be happening in this year actually happened last year, like the budget policy statement. So it becomes difficult for the public to keep up. And, you know, you cannot analyze the CIDP without looking at all the 5 ADPs. Yeah. So, and other documents. It has been very difficult to make the connection between the documents, but through continuous capacity building, I see them taking it up and being more proactive and asking us, isn't the budget policy statement upcoming? You know, they'll ask such questions, and they actually seek audience for us to come and take them through the process again, and to enable them to be able to participate in a meaningful manner.
What's the end goal of all of this? This advocacy, this education, this insistence that, you know, there is an eye on all of these processes that take place. What is the end goal? What we hope to see happens as a result of all of this?
Okay, CSOs have done a very great job when it comes to holding the government accountable. But just imagine if every single Kenyan was doing the same. The end goal is social accountability. We want everybody to take ownership of holding the government accountable, because they are the ones who are actually receiving the services. If COVID-19 is anything to go by, an additional 2 million people became poor in a span of 1 year. So, I mean, even those who are not living below the poverty line found themselves in that particular place. So anybody can end up there. So why not be proactive and compel the government to use the resources wisely? At the end of the day, it's our taxes which are going towards this public service delivery.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Sorry. There's this widespread notion that Kenyans don't participate unless they are facilitated. Are you finding that spirit of that interest coming from the communities, or are you forced to keep looking for resources to facilitate?
We are actually forced to keep on looking for resources. That is one of the things that we've been trying to mitigate. It's very difficult, especially when working in urban informal settlements. This is people taking time out of their daily routine to come and participate. So they feel compelled to ask for this facilitation. But what we've decided to do is work with passionate Kenyans. I, for instance, didn't start from a point of employment with this advocacy. It was just an individual initiative. So we work with budget champions who are actually passionate. And of course, we still have to drum for resources because there's a lot of administrative costs. We have to print training materials and things like those. So it's also important for the government to take it upon themselves to use their government-led spaces to also build the capacity of citizens. Yeah.
When you talk about holding government accountable, I find that, just that without an understanding of the process, then it is difficult to hold somebody accountable, because then on what are you going to peg it, right? So this story, brilliant story that you've given of this lady who says, well, look, there's money in my account, so what are we talking about here? So do you find that then it's easier to then draw parallels or see connections between, if this is not working, for example, in your constituency, and there was money that was allocated for it, and we don't see these projects being completed, do you see that now sharing experiences like that with communities helps them to understand what is going on a grander scale?
Definitely. Because, like I said earlier, these budget terminologies can be very complex. And as much as some organizations have tried to actually translate the constitution, for instance, into Kiswahili and other vernacular languages, the regular budget documents that come out on an annual basis are still in English. Some people are still locked out and they are not able to understand what is going on in these documents. So when you make relation to how it affects their daily lives, petroleum products have gone up, meaning it's going to affect food prices. I think that's something that has really come out in the last few days. So when you start making such relations is when the citizens start to come out and join the whole advocacy on holding the government accountable. Yeah.
Right. Have you seen uptake between the annual development plan, which is the first stage in the county planning and budgeting process, in the county budgeting process, because the ADP picks the priorities from the CIDP and customizes and said, okay, so in 5 years we want to do this year we want to do that. So those are policy statements. You then have the next round of documents until where the money is committed. So if you say we are going to create youth employment in blah, 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 did they actually put the money? Are you seeing the money following the political policy promises?
Okay. So the ADP actually serves to update the CIDP because there are certain things that happen within the society that were not expected. For instance, COVID-19. So we had to, that ADP for that particular financial year had to reflect the reality of the situation at that particular point. So it's important to be able to, first of all, make traces and track if these projects and programs are actually being actualized. And the gap or the place where that is amiss is when it comes to budgetary allocation and implementation. You'll find that different departments are having very low absorption rates. So that is one of the reasons why the plans are not reflecting into services. Because first of all, the first problem is lack of or low limited allocations. Then it comes that the money is in the county revenue fund, but it's not being utilized because it was disbursed late from the national government to the county government. So those are systemic issues which are like curbing the government from offering services to the public.
So my question was, are they allocating? Because the other trick that government sometimes plays is they'll give you the policy statements, but when it comes to allocating, they then put their own priorities. So are the allocations there?
To some extent, they are there. There's one particular instance that I came across for a community health center in Embakasi South, whereby they had budgeted for an incinerator in that health facility. Until today, the incinerator is not there.
So the allocation is there, but
The allocation is there, but the incinerator was never installed.
implemented.
So what happened?
So we tried to do a petition to the county government, but until now nothing has been done.
To the county assembly or to the
County assembly.
Assembly.
Yes.
What happens in such a case? So it has been budgeted for, it has been appropriated and allocated, but it has not been utilized. So is it that the money that goes back, is this what we talk about absorption rate? And are there reports as to why this did not happen?
In fact, it's been very difficult to solve that issue. We have no clue where that money went. I'm sure it did not go back, but I think it's an issue of misappropriation.
Has your MCA picked it up, or has the county assembly picked it up?
No, they haven't.
Interesting.
That's why I want the public to get more involved, because that is just one case. Just imagine what is happening in other constituencies across the country.
That's why I want to ask my question, because you are a community-based organization and active group, right? So you're mobilizing the community on some areas. This is the same community that elects representatives that go to the assemblies, both at the county and the national level.
Yes.
Are the representatives aware of your existence and all the work that you're doing? For example, do you engage in Embakasi East, right?
Embakasi
South. In Embakasi South, do you engage with your MCA? Do you engage with the area member of parliament?
I'll tell you one very funny story that happened. There's a time we were engaging the community on the CIDP. So we were doing like a stock taking of what has been implemented and what is yet to be implemented. And after that session, it was a very nice write-up that everybody got to go home with. So they went into the community and they were showing their relatives, their friends, and their neighbors. And in the evening, I got a call from the member of parliament trying to justify why some of these developmental projects had not been actualized. But in real sense, you're not supposed to be answering to me. You should be answering to your constituents. You see? So when we have these forums, community forums, we always invite them, because they are the representatives who are supposed to ensure that these plans are actually actualized. So we do engage them on a consistent basis.
Have you, when you found these discrepancies, have you written to the EACC or the Controller of Budget?
Yes, we have written to the EACC, but they've really not been forthcoming, unfortunately. But moving forward, we are going to try and engage them further, and also the Office of the Auditor General and the Controller of Budget as well.
Yeah.
So they're very important stakeholders in all this, since they're the oversight authorities.
Right.
So it is important that we get them also on our side.
Because COB, AG have county level coordinators who can pick up these kind of issues. The AG has a citizen audit platform. I forget the name, I think it's CAA or something, that they are trying to put into place. So they are very, very interested, because they recognize the way the AG works is when they are doing
AG here being
Auditor General, they sample. They don't audit everything. They sample. They might sample maybe, 5%, not 5%, maybe 10 or 20% of all the work. So they recognize they miss a lot. And they also only audit the books. So they don't know whether the books reflect what's on the ground. So they are very, very keen on that. So I think if you write to them and do so with a full view of your community, so that they realize it's not just one person or just the institution.
It's not a lone voice.
It's not a lone voice.
Yeah.
Because there's also, unfortunately, sometimes there's also complicity within oversight institutions by individuals. So the public process is is important to give you cover and to give force. But I think it's really important.
Good job that you're
definitely
doing,
great
Eve.
job.
Eve Mathai is a co-founder of KE Budget Talk and also has another campaign that you run, Follow the Money, and very many other things. I think if you were not the head girl in your school, you're the one who was organizing strikes. One of those two.
On the contrary, it's the latter.
Oh, strikes.
The one who was organizing. Definitely, it had to be one of those two. Either you've been made head girl by the head teacher so that you are contained.
Good for
I
you.
wish they could see me now.
Hey, doing
They
such
probably
great
are.
work.
Yeah.
We are talking about the citizens understanding the budget and looking at yesterday's budget speech by CS Ukur Yatani. In the next half of the hour, we will talk about now, do we as citizens understand what Ukur Yatani was talking about? Do we understand the budget? What is our role in following up what has been promised? All those pledges in the budget. It's 7:30. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. We'll be back shortly. Good morning.
This is The Situation Room.
It continues. Your host this morning, Eric Latif Nduoko, our guest host, Wanjiru Gikonyo from the Institute for Social Accountability, and our host this hour is Eve Mathai. Oh, our guest, Eve Mathai,
Oh, thank
Working yourself out of a job, Eric. That's very commendable.
co-founder of the KE Budget Talk and also Follow the Money. We are talking about Mwananchi understanding the money. One of the documents that Ukur Yatani presented to Parliament yesterday was, well, the speech that he just read, the budget estimates, and what he called the Mwananchi abridged version of the budget. If you look at it, you are a serious Mwananchi if you understand it. Anyway, some of the areas that we talk about currently, the issues affecting the country. Food security. How much money has gone into food security? He says that, to make sure that there's food security, there's a lot of money that they are going to put in. Let me just read you the money. I'll tell you about
46
sustaining
billion.
water supplies.
46 billion.
46 billion has gone into food security. I want to break it down into where it's going. 4.2 billion National Agriculture and Rural Inclusivity Project, 1.5 billion Small Scale Irrigation and Value Addition Project, 1.7 billion Kenya Cereal Enhancement Program, 1.9 billion Emergency Locust Response, 1.6 billion National Value Chain Support Project, 690 million Food Security and Crop Diversification, and on and on and on, including exploitation of living resources under the blue economy, 1.3 billion, 1.65 billion for Kenya Livestock Commercialization Program. So, all in all, the 46 billion shillings going into food security. At the end of the day, do we understand what that is all about?
That's a very good question. We always advocate for transparency in these budget documents, and that is by giving non-financial information. We want to see the number of beneficiaries, how many women, how many men, how many youth, how many persons with disabilities are going to benefit from those allocations. And most of the time, you'll find that counties are not presenting this information. So it is important that they do so for us to be able to make the link between this huge amounts of money that are being allocated to these sectors and the service delivery that is coming out, or the beneficiaries that are getting the benefits from these programs. So there's a huge disconnect. It is difficult for a common Mwananchi to understand how it is working. So there is also a need for sensitization. They need to go down to grassroots level and explain exactly where the amounts of money are going. For instance, in urban informal settlements, I think what they should have focused on is developing urban farming. I've actually gone to someone's house in Mukuru Kwanjenga, and they were actually keeping cows. The excuse has been lack of space, but I saw it with my own eyes. The lady had 2 cows. So what she did, she rented a different house next to hers, and she kept the cows there. So she sells milk, and she has a sustainable business.
Does General Badi know this?
I don't know if that is legal, but it's happening. So
Don't stress too much.
No, can you imagine the neighbors?
No, but urban farming is real.
Okay, yeah,
Yes.
but can you imagine the neighbors
she's
of this
supplying
lady?
milk to the neighbors.
It's okay, but can you imagine?
Milk trumps manure.
Pragmatism.
And
Then don't forget, most Kenyans are just one hop away from rural area. Tumezoea. Okay, let me not say tumezoea, but
What you
I know. I'm like, let me be real here. But many Kenyans have grown up with the cow next door.
I agree and I understand when you talk about, okay, so urban agriculture, but then I think taking it to the cows is a bit extreme. But what is this urban agriculture about?
There are modernized ways, utilizing small spaces of how you can plant your vegetables, your daily vegetables.
So kitchen garden.
Nothing major like maize, like herbs,
your
vegetables,
sukuma wiki and
sukuma, tomatoes, onions. You can actually do them in small spaces. So there are actually organizations that have done or implemented this in informal settlements, and they're targeting community centers and schools. They are trying to encourage sustainability when it comes to food security in those particular areas. And they're mostly planting fruit trees so that kids can be able to get some nutrition from the schools, because when they go home, it's a different story.
Yeah. Even as you say this, I mean, so all of these things are happening. There's this advocacy that's going on. There's this education that's happening, getting people to understand and removing these, difficult conversations and making them, granular, right? And then comes budget day. And then this 3-hour speech is given. And the folks were thinking, okay, well, let's just get over this. They're going to tell us how much the government is going to spend. There'll be traffic at Parliament buildings. Then we'll all go home and continue, right? But do you actually see that through this advocacy, people are getting to understand the fundamentals of what government ought to be doing to make this environment that we're talking about being conducive? Do you see that the advocacy that you're spending long hours and sweat on is yielding a result that will then get people truly, because it sounds very NGO speak, let's hold the government accountable, let's put things in place, let's have monitoring and evaluation. It sounds good. But do we actually see tangibly that folks are understanding what this so important advocacy is about? And so then come budget day, with all this that we are seeing, it then makes sense to them. Are you seeing that happen?
In fact, it's a lot of information to process. Even within our own team, we have to divide ourselves into sectors to make sense of the different areas, because it's a lot of information. So you can imagine the common Mwananchi who does not have the time to go through this. So they rely on their community radio presenters to break it down.
Right.
Mainstream media like you guys to break it down. So we still have a long way to go in terms of building the capacity to understand this. So also the government has a role to ensure that this happened, but they're not actually executing it.
Do you
so
think
whose responsibility does it become?
Because here, if you're looking at it from the government point of view, and just follow me talking, if I explain my role to you, right, I've opened up the door for you to be able to come and ask me anything at any time, and I must answer you in truth. So do you find then that government would be a bit cagey with this information? Because what it does is that then you can demand this information of us later, like the gentleman who called you later and said, well, let me explain to you why this money was actually, misappropriated. But if people understand what exactly is going on, then they can see through anything that is put up, right? So would you find that government is a stumbling block in this process for not wanting folks to really understand what is happening, because then that leaves them naked, as it were?
Exactly. So there was a research conducted by IBP on the County Budget Transparency Survey, and it's been happening since 2015. What they've been trying to achieve with that project is to check the level of transparency that counties have, and also the comprehensiveness of these documents, because counties will publicize and publish the documents, but what is the content of the documents? There's minimal information. So over the years, we've seen an improvement when it comes to comprehensiveness, but we still have a long way to go. Counties, the last statistics, I think it was at 33.3% in terms of transparency. So you see, that's very minimal. They're not actually giving us the information we need to be able to make decisions. So it's important for Kenyans to take it upon themselves to go as far as physically tracking. They said a hospital was equipped with some machinery in this particular area. People should actually go to the facility
hospital.
and quantify and tell the rest of the country what is going on in that particular health facility. When people start taking it up on themselves, I think the government will shy away from not implementing, because without implementation, there are no access to services.
Indeed.
Can I just, I think the question you've asked, Ndu, is very provoking, because what do we envisage as the active citizen? And I think, I've seen many moons, and I like hearing the younger voices with more innovative ideas. But I also think there are some assumptions we made as we started this work that maybe aren't fully correct, because the citizens' primary interest is their work and their family. So the idea that they will that the active citizen has to be holding government to account all the time, maybe we can rejig that and say this. Citizens need to engage in government processes, but the onus is on government to be responsive. Because like now, if we take that example of the urban farming, keeping cows, when government comes with regulations that disrupt your livelihood, which public participation will take place? So a responsive government will actually listen and say, what are the needs in this community? Food security is the first need. What have people done? They have set up kitchen gardens. How do we then help the kitchen garden? If you start the conversation there, citizens will engage. But when you come now with your bylaws and laws that displace citizens then sit back. And so part of the apathy really comes from a government that is so removed. It's so far removed. And we have to push the issue of participatory policy frameworks, participatory budget frameworks.
Participatory governance.
Participatory governance.
Yeah.
So, and so I think we don't want a advocacy of dependency, because advocacy only works when citizens have agency and they recognize, I must do this, and government is coming to complement. The problem is right now government occupies too much space. So the policies create the apathy, create the dependency, because they don't give citizens space to exercise agency.
But I come back to representation, because those people who are supposed to make sure that the executive is responsive to the people are the representatives of the people who've been elected directly by the people. Now, that's where the citizen also has a role to play in terms of, do we elect an MCA to lord over us, or do we elect an MCA who comes from our community, who understands, who engages with us, who lives and breathes with us, who spends their day with us, and therefore they are going to tell the executive at City Hall, this is what my people want. And you'll find that the ward rep from this ward and the next ward rep will basically be talking the same thing. But now here we have, when you say government, we are including assembly plus executive, because all of them are same. Now, this is a question then. How do we, so that we can make our work of being active citizens much easier, how do we have leaders who are responsive to us, who will come to us and tell us, okay, so guys, we know these are the problems that we have. Kuna shida, we need ablution blocks, we need water services, we need sanitation. We also know that this hospital, we need an incinerator in the hospital. And we have had a conversation and we are thinking that the incinerator will come first. And this is what will happen. So you are made aware. So the next time you're having a conversation with your MCA, you're asking, incinerator, you said it's coming, where is incinerator? Is it here? Is it not? It starts with the citizen then electing the leader. Do we understand? I mean, as you work in the grassroots, is everybody on the same page when it comes to why elect a leader?
I get very disheartened when I hear my fellow Kenyans saying how they're not going to wake up and go to vote. And I understand why to some point, because they've really been disappointed and they've lost faith in government. But I would like to compel them to actually go and vote, because we need to elect, first of all, leaders of integrity. I'd hope to see the aspirants, the incoming aspirants, presenting manifestos, a plan. What do I intend to do even in the first year? that should be the area that is meant to convince the citizens on why they are the most eligible party. So I think at this point we are at an advantage. It's the right time to kind of sieve and identify the right people for these positions. And we should not, the president and the vice president is also a very important seat, but we should also look at the grassroots leaders. These are the MCAs, the women rep, the senators, the governor, on county level. Devolution was supposed to bring equal share or to resources to reach the marginalized communities. But it's been about 9 years, and you still have areas like the arid and semi-arid lands still experiencing drought and hunger. These are stories we've been hearing since we were children. Why is it still happening? We have to question the level of preparedness for food security systems in Kenya. Why are we not putting in sustainable measures? Who stands to gain when all this is happening? So once we communicate this to the public, they will be more proactive when it comes to asking their leaders to actually fulfill their obligations. Yes.
If over the last number of years, we've been putting in a lot of money into, food security and climate action. For example, this year or in the next financial year, 7 billion shillings will go into the Kenya Climate Smart Agriculture Project. So those things that you're talking about have been taken care of. 7 billion shillings. Climate Smart Agriculture Project.
And what has come out of it?
See you now. Those are questions that you ask Ukuriatani.
One of our partners, Afrodad, brought out a very interesting perspective on this whole climate change move. They said, number one, climate change is a values issue because it's about how you handle land, how you handle your environment, how you handle water. And these, we already have programs on that. And so the idea that you now have a new climate change approach may actually just be another project that misses the point, that you have to change your relationship with your external environment and you have to implement the programs that you have. Like if it's water users associations, whether it's environmental committees, they should be active and they should be retrained. So there's there's a scam here. There's a big opportunity.
Have you ever gone to any part of this country and actually found an active water users association?
Yeah, that's
I've been to Turkana County and I've seen a lot of improvement when it comes to access to water, especially in the very, very remote areas.
Okay.
They've done a good job in drilling boreholes.
Was there an active water users association?
Yeah.
They do.
At community level?
Yes.
That
in
are
some
organized.
places,
and
in
they
some
know
places.
that we are members of the Water Users Association and those are the other members of the water users. And together we come.
Maybe not that perfectly, but that's what the law anticipates, whether it happens. And it comes back to the issue of part of the reason why public participation is so disjointed is that the bodies for public participation aren't operational. They are there in law. You'll find, like with the Water Users Association, there's a time that I think it was GIZ or one of these funders was really supporting that initiative. And at that point, they were very active. When the funding stopped, they then stopped being active. So there's a need to see, if it's health, there's community health committees. Project health committees in the health sector. So all these sectors, land, all have community level frameworks or committees that are supposed to be drawn from residents who are concerned about their local service delivery. But those don't work. So the issue is, where is the capture? Why aren't they working?
Is it the approach or the understanding of the community members that this is a job? So I'm going in there because when we go for a meeting, we get 200 shillings and come back home. So the day the money runs out, I don't understand why I'm going to meet. What am I going to meet about?
I'm not going to get paid.
That's one side of it. I don't think it's that simple. I think people engage when they anticipate rewards. And if you see a process is closed, then you'll go for the money. Because you're like, siendi, ata nikienda, what is it? But then you're told, there is 200 bob, 500 bob. Then you'll go.
I'll go.
So, there's a calculation that people make because...
So if it's not translating to actual results and tangible results where the community sees that these are tangible results, then people will not participate.
We have maybe we do have a values problem in this country in terms of volunteerism and all of that. That needs to be built. But the fact that people get involved in their court committees, they get involved in church committees,
Yep.
and they don't go there asking for 200 bob because they see a value.
Because it's not government. There's an association in our mind. Government, pay me.
That's the thing. But one of the fundamental things about development is that it begets itself, right? That you see something, it's just the way human nature then now responds to this thing. That you see something positive happening, that then you are spurred on naturally to want to see it continue and then be sustained. Whether you're getting something as an individual, whether you're getting some individual benefit, but when you see that there is development all around, the likelihood of you wanting to be involved in it to see some more and perpetuate that development is higher than if you didn't, right? So it's just one of the things that you see, this thing is working. We were at zero. We've seen this thing is working. I want to do more to see how it could work some more. It just is how it
Human
happens.
nature.
It's just nature. Now, the thing is, to get to that place where it is working in a sustainable manner, then you say, all right, can we get more and more people to then plug in and then see how we can get more of these answers, do more of this education, have more of this advocacy, and then get people who are duty bearers then to answer and be accountable on some of these things. That's where you have people, latching on. You'll find that where you only saw a little bit and it wasn't sustained, that's where they fall apart, and then you'll not be able to see any kind of progress. And so that's the thing that we see the same way when you see that in some counties, for example, things work and everybody kind of works together to make sure that it continues. Where you see very little progress is where it was not sustained,
Yeah, and like Eric was saying, the relationship between citizens and leaders this electoral relationship remains a problem point. I think the other problem point is the democratization of county-based systems, because we have devolution, but devolution is centralized at the county level, and the beneficiaries of the devolution system are the county government officials and the county assembly officials. The citizens are still bystanders. And so citizens calculate and say, if you want me to come for your meeting, pay me. Because they don't see it as theirs. Their ability to influence outcomes, like you say, you get it into the ADP, you have participated, and at the end of the day, nothing comes out of it. Isn't that time wasted?
Of course. I think that's what, maybe, and then you can comment about this. I think that's why then an open communication of some of the work that's being done then is fundamental, because then you let people know that these are the results of the things that we have been involved in and this is what it has given. That when you put it out in the open, more and more people get to know about it and want to be involved in that process. Do you see that as something that could then perpetuate this work that's being done?
I can also make reference to the same survey I was talking about, the County Budget Transparency Survey.
Yeah.
When it came out, we saw a lot of governors coming out and questioning IBP. How did you come up with these results? Why is my county number last?
Yeah.
So it brought a sense of competition. So that is why it's important to use social platforms to air these problems out, because it then compels government to take action, because no one wants to be seen like they're not actually fulfilling their obligations. So once this is in the open, I've seen a couple of governors, because on the subsequent survey came out, a certain county elevated itself to number one. So, I mean, the advocacy is actually working. I can't say that entirely that it's a waste of time, but I've seen some progress, but though minimal, we still have a long way to go. But if we continue, I think we'll gain some progress.
Eve, thank you very much for joining us.